Hey everybody, it's Bukola Oguntala. I'm your host of the Beyond the Pattern podcast, coming to you with a short take. And today's topic is not every hill is worth dying on. The battles that cost us the most aren't always the ones we lose. Sometimes they're the ones we never should have entered in the first place. I want to tell you about a season I went through not too long ago. I was dealing with an unexpected health situation, something I couldn't have planned for, right in the middle of a very demanding work environment. You see, I had a leader who ran on urgency. Everything was fast. Everything needed to happen now. That was just his operating mode. I told him up front what I was dealing with, but he was on autopilot, and honestly, that's just how he was wired. So I had a choice. I could fight that pattern every single time it showed up. I could get frustrated every time he forgot. I could make it a battle about respect, awareness, or consideration, or I could find a different way through. So I've started asking one simple question every time. Every time something came at me, I asked, is this time sensitive? And something interesting happened. Sometimes he'd pause and say, actually, no, it can wait. Sometimes he'd say, you know what, I can just handle it myself. And I'd say, great, go ahead. And that one question changed the whole dynamic. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a calm redirect that gave him a chance to recalibrate without either of us having to make it a thing. The battle I could have chosen every single day, I just stopped picking it up. And that freed up so much energy for the things that actually mattered. That's what this episode is about, because here's the thing about battles. In the moment, they rarely feel like a choice. They feel like a response. I'm just correcting something. I'm protecting a standard. I can't let this slide. Sound familiar? Those thoughts feel completely reasonable. Sometimes they even feel like leadership. But the question worth asking is, what is actually driving this? Because there are really three kinds of battles we step into. The first one is battles of principle, where something genuinely matters and needs to be addressed, like speaking up when someone on your team is being treated unfairly. That's worth the fight. Another battle is a battle of strategy, where you're clear on the outcome you need and how to get there, like pushing back on a decision that will hurt the business long term. That's calculated and intentional. Next is the third battle, which is a battle of ego, where something in you needs to be protected, validated, or heard, like going hard on a peer because they got credit for something you contributed to. The issue might be real, but the energy behind it is personal. And the tricky part, they can all feel exactly the same in the moment. And right now, this pattern is running especially hard. You see, we're living in a hustle culture that treats urgency like a virtue. Everything is a priority. Everything needs a response now. Everything feels like it requires your full energy immediately. And on top of that, people are stressed. People are stretched, carrying more uncertainty than they want to admit. When people are stressed, their threshold gets lower. Things that wouldn't have landed as hard before are landing harder now. Old frustrations are getting activated by new situations. And what looks like a leadership decision is sometimes just exhaustion making the call. Now, that's not weakness, that's human, but it's worth noting because the battles we pick in high pressure seasons leave marks that last a lot longer than the moment itself. At work, it shows up in what gets escalated, what gets emphasized over and over, what starts to feel heavier than it needs to. Teams don't just respond to what you say, they respond to what you repeatedly choose to make important. And when everything starts to feel like a battle, people lose clarity on what actually matters. They become more guarded, more careful, less willing to bring things forward. But it's not just a leadership thing, it's your personal life. The battles you choose shape your energy, your relationships, your peace. I've seen people burn through real goodwill fighting battles rooted in old hurt. I've seen people damage relationships that genuinely mattered because something from years ago got activated in a current moment. I've seen people spend months in conflict that cost them emotionally, professionally, and financially over something that was never really about what was on the surface. I also saw this play out on a leadership team I was working with. There was a senior leader, smart, experienced, who got into it with a peer over how a project decision got communicated. Now, was there a real issue? Yes. Did it need to be addressed? Probably. But the way she went in, the energy, the escalation, the emotional weight behind it, told me something older had gotten activated. And by the time it was over, the real issue was almost secondary. What the team remembered was the intensity, the tension, the unspoken question of, is this what happens when we disagree? The battle got chosen, but not wisely. So how do you catch it before you're already in it? Here's what to look for. The first signal is disproportionate energy. When your reaction feels bigger than the situation, pause there. That gap between what happened and how hard it landed, that's usually a sign something older is involved. The second signal is the story that's already written. You already know what they meant. You already know how this is going to go. You already know what's at stake. When you've decided all that before the conversation even starts, that's the signal. The third signal is needing to win more than needing to resolve. When you notice you care more about being right than about what actually moves things forward, that's the ego battle showing up. And it deserves an honest look before you go any further. The question that helps most in the moment is simple. Am I reacting to what's actually happening or to what I've already decided this means? That one question can stop a whole pattern in its tracks. And sometimes, like in my situation, the question you ask out loud is even simpler. Is this time sensitive? That was me deciding the hill wasn't worth dying on. Not because the issue didn't matter, but because I got clear on what actually did. And here's what I've seen happen when people pause and get clear before they fight. Sometimes you realize the conversation still needs to happen, but now you go in grounded instead of activated, and it lands completely different. Sometimes you realize the battle wasn't yours to carry at all, and releasing it gives you energy back you didn't know you were spending. And sometimes you realize what you actually needed wasn't a fight. It was a boundary, a direct conversation, or just the clarity that this situation no longer deserves your attention. Those are three very different things from going to war. And when leaders learn to tell the difference, teams feel that too. There's more steadiness, more trust, more confidence that when something does get addressed, it actually matters. So here's a simple practice. The next time you feel the pull to fight, pause and ask 3 questions before you move. What is actually driving this right now? Principle, strategy, or something personal? What outcome do I actually need, and does this battle get me there? What will it cost me and the people around me if I handle this the wrong way? Not to talk yourself out of every hard conversation, but to make sure that when you do engage, you're leading it, not being led by it. Now, in closing, some battles absolutely need to happen. Some conversations need to be had. Some lines need to be drawn. This is not about never fighting. It's about knowing what's driving the fight before you commit to it. Because the battles you choose shape more than the moment. They shape your team's sense of safety. They shape your relationships. They shape the energy you have left for what actually matters. Because not every hill's worth dying on. And the leaders who know the difference, they're not the ones who fight the hardest. They're the ones who get clear first. So this week, notice one moment where you feel the pull to fight before you go and ask those 3 questions. And when something shifts, I want to hear about it. Find me on LinkedIn or drop me a comment on YouTube, on the podcast, wherever you're listening. That's what this community is built on. People doing the real work and sharing what they're learning. I hope this adds value. And whatever you do, keep moving beyond your patterns. Take care, everybody, and have a good week. If this episode resonated, I'd love to hear from you. You can text or leave a voicemail at 404-828-0279. That's 404-828-0279. Or you can visit me at BukolaOguntala.com to send in a question, share your story, or explore coaching and speaking services. Whether you're leading a team or learning to lead yourself, I'm honored to be on this journey with you. And if you haven't already, hit follow or subscribe so we can keep growing together.